الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين ذرية بعضها من بعض. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We begin by extending our condolences to the living Imam, Al-Imam Sahib Al-Asr wa Zaman, on the anniversary of the martyrdom of his beloved grandfather, Al-Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam. There are very few matters in which there is a consensus among the Muslims. When it comes to virtually every issue, you see that there is ikhtilaf. Tafsir of a verse, there's ikhtilaf. There's a difference of opinion. It's very rare that you see Muslims agreeing on something without any dispute. Whether it's about ahkam as-salah, whether it's about the attributes of Allah, whether it's about the details of Qiyamah, typically you are going to find that there is a difference of opinion. Very rarely do you see all Muslims agree on a particular matter. Among the issues where you see that there is actually ijma', there is a consensus among all Muslims, among those issues is the greatness of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi. It is agreed upon by all Muslims of all different theological persuasions, whether you're talking about Hanafi Muslims or Shafi'i, Maliki or Hanbali, Ash'ari, Mu'tazili. No matter what sect a Muslim belongs to, it is universally acknowledged that Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq was the greatest scholar of his time. All Muslims unanimously recognize his great knowledge. So much so that we have testimonies from not just non-Shias. We have powerful testimonies from great Sunni scholars who are actually the founders of schools of jurisprudence. We have a statement, for example, from Abu Hanifa, who was the founder of the Hanafi school of jurisprudence. The majority of Sunni Muslims actually subscribe to the Hanafi school. Abu Hanifa, he studied for 2 years, approximately 2 years, under Imam Al-Sadiq. And he famously said, لولا السنتان لهلك النعمان. Nu'man was his name. He says, if it wasn't for those 2 years that I spent gaining knowledge from Ja'far ibn Muhammad, I would have perished. I would not have emerged as a person who had comprehensive knowledge of Islam. As Imam Al-Sadiq's popularity grew, and you have Muslims from all around the Islamic empire flocking to Medina, and as Brother Muhammad mentioned, the Imam ﷺ took advantage of the political instability. He took advantage of the Umayyad decline and that power vacuum that existed, and he took advantage of that period to preach, because the government was weak. And in that short period of time, you see that people were finally exposed to the rich knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt. And obviously, the Abbasid caliphs who rose to power were envious, and at the same time they were afraid. They were envious of how popular the Imam was, especially because the Imam ﷺ would do this effortlessly. The Imam ﷺ did not have, a marketing team. The Imam ﷺ did not have people who were marketing and promoting him. The Imam ﷺ, without any entourages, he would attract masses of people. And naturally, the Khalifa was troubled. This is a man with immense influence. This is a man with a lot of power. He's the grandson of the Prophet. So, you see that the Khalifa, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi, what he would do is that he would try to belittle, he would try to promote other scholars. He would try to give them a platform. In fact, on one occasion, Mansur, he summoned Abu Hanifa himself. And he says to Abu Hanifa that I'm going to have a gathering in which I will invite Ja'far al-Sadiq. And I want you are one of the most prominent scholars in the Ummah, I want you to prepare 40 of the most difficult questions. And I want you to present them during our meeting. It was a public event. So Abu Hanifa, he spends days, weeks writing the most complex questions that he could formulate. The meeting, the conference is announced, and Abu Hanifa says that I entered into the palace of Mansur, and the Khalifa was sitting, and Imam Al-Sadiq was sitting beside him. The Imam was summoned, he didn't have a choice. And Abu Hanifa said that I was taken by the presence of Imam Al-Sadiq more than the Khalifa. And I felt my heart tremble when I came into the presence of Abu Hanifa. And Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, when I came into the presence of Imam Al-Sadiq. And Abu Hanifa, he actually mentions this, that I feel overwhelmed by your hayba. He says this to the Imam. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, this is natural, because you are coming into the presence of those whom Allah says, في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع. Mansur, he promoted himself. He elevated himself to the Khilafah. You are coming into the presence of people in whose homes Allah has elevated. So Abu Hanifa, he says that I presented each question to the Imam, and the Imam answered each question that I presented to him by saying, أنتم تقولون كذا وهم يقولون كذا, that the people of Iraq, the scholars of Iraq, they have this opinion, and the scholars of Medina say this, and this is my opinion. And the Imam alayhi salam, for every question, he presented all of the competing theories and all of the competing views. And then he would give his answer. And this is when, after that lengthy session, Abu Hanifa himself, he says that indeed, he says, مَا رَأَيْتُ أَفْقَهْ مِنْ جَعْفَرِ ibn Muhammad. I have not seen anyone with deeper knowledge than Ja'far al-Sadiq. And then he says, أعلم الناس أعلمهم باختلاف الناس. the one who has the greatest knowledge is the one who also has knowledge of the various opinions. The Imam alayhi salam was very well versed. He knew all of the different theories and all of the different interpretations. So this is what Abu Hanifa said about Imam Al-Sadiq. There's another statement where Malik ibn Anas, who is the founder of the Maliki school of thought, many Sunnis who are in northern Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, they subscribe to the Maliki school of thought, the Maliki school of jurisprudence. Malik also studied directly under Imam Al-Sadiq. So you have two of the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah who were direct students of Imam Al-Sadiq, Abu Hanifa and Malik ibn Anas. And then you have Shafi'i, Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, Muhammad ibn Idris Al-Shafi'i, who was a student of Malik. And then you have Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Hanbali Muslims, right, who are primarily in Najd, Saudi Arabia. Ahmad ibn Hanbal studied under Al-Shafi'i. So all of them, in fact, they trace their knowledge in one way or another, either directly to Imam Al-Sadiq or indirectly to Imam Al-Sadiq. And yet, unfortunately, today, you will probably not hear a single mention of Ja'far al-Sadiq. You'll hear the opinion of Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. This is the opinion of Malik. This is the opinion of Abu Hanifa. But how about the opinion of Ja'far al-Sadiq? How about the opinion of the Imam? An Imam whom Malik ibn Anas himself, he says, مَا رَأَتْ عَيْنٍ وَلَا سَمِعَتْ أُذُنٍ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ أَفْقَهَ مِنْ جَعْفَرِ ibn Muhammad. That the Malik ibn Anas, what does he say? He says, no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no heart has ever comprehended someone more learned than Ja'far al-Sadiq. And what is incredible about this Imam is that not only did he train scholars in Islamic theology and Islamic jurisprudence, he also trained people in the natural sciences. One of the students of Imam al-Sadiq became known in medieval Europe as the father of chemistry, Jabir ibn Hayyan. This man, even if you search his name in the Britannica Encyclopedia, you will find that they'll mention his biography and they will mention that he was a pupil of Ja'far al-Sadiq. And it was his works. He wrote many books on chemistry and numerology, so much so that his works were translated and they were distributed throughout medieval Europe. And some of his writings are even found in museums throughout Europe. And if you see the Arabic, if you read the Arabic, he begins each section of his book by saying, حدثني Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. That Ja'far ibn Muhammad taught me about, the categorization of these chemicals. He taught me about these elements. It was Imam al-Sadiq. And therefore, much of what we see during the European Renaissance is actually traceable to the knowledge that was disseminated by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So you have the Imam teaching the natural sciences. The Imam alayhi salam, he also trained great fuqaha, great scholars, experts in Islamic law. The Imam alayhi salam, he would be summoned by the Abbasids, the Abbasid officials. Sometimes in the middle of the night, they would summon him. They would call upon him to go to the palace, to report what his activities are. Sometimes they would relocate him to Iraq, to Kufa. And the Imam, no matter where they put him, he took advantage of every place that he was. And he would meet with students. And some of his most prominent students were actually in Iraq, in Kufa. You have the likes of Zurara ibn A'yan, you have Muhammad ibn Muslim. And these are individuals whom the Imam alayhi salam, he didn't just share them a hadith here and there. He developed them. He trained them to be scholars who were able to deduce Islamic laws from the primary sources. The Imam alayhi salam, he taught them how to do ijtihad. And Imam, he would teach them certain jurisprudential maxims that they could use to extrapolate many legal rulings. So for example, one of the things that we have from Imam Al-Sadiq that he taught to Zurara and Muhammad ibn Muslim is what? The Imam says, لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. The Imam gives them this jurisprudential maxim, this rule of thumb that you can use and you can derive thousands of ahkam just from these 4 words. Do not negate your certainty with doubt. And from this, Zurara, Muhammad ibn Muslim, they're able to derive many Islamic rulings. And I'll give you a few examples. Based on this maxim, we can derive a number of ahkam. For example, if it is the time of Salat al-Dhuhr, and you were certain that at 9 a.m. you did wudu. You're certain at 9 a.m. you performed wudu. Now it's the time of Salat al-Dhuhr and now you have doubt. Am I still in a state of wudu or not? Based on that maxim that Imam Al-Sadiq taught, لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. What's the ruling? That you can consider yourself in a state of wudu because you were certain that you were in a state of wudu and now you have doubt whether your wudu is invalidated. Do not negate that certainty with doubt. So the Imam alayhi salam, through this ruling, he teaches them these maxims and they're able to issue religious verdicts. And this is why Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, he would say to the likes of Aban ibn Taghlib, this great scholar who was trained by Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq, the Imam says to him, Ijlis fi masjid al-Madina wa aftin nas. The Imam himself is in Medina, but he's telling Aban, go and sit in the masjid of the Prophet and give fatwas, give religious verdicts. Now you may say, but the Imam is there. Why don't the people come to the Imam? Because the A'imma, they're training us, they're training their followers to get into the habit of referring to scholars. Because during the ghaibah, what's going to happen? The Shias have to be accustomed to referring to pious scholars. So they're already laying the groundwork for the Shias to smoothly transition from an era where they have access to the Imams to an era where they will not have any more direct access to the Imams. Where the only way for them to learn their deen is to go to the fuqaha, to go to the ulama. So the Imam would train people in chemistry. He had students who mastered biology. If you look at Mufaddal ibn Umar used to engage in many debates with atheists to the point where his belief became shaky because they started to make him doubt. So he comes to the Imam and he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I feel that my faith is no longer firm. These debates that I've had with atheists, they've confused me. So the Imam alayhi salam, he says, come tomorrow morning at Fajr. And the Imam seems to he wanted to have it at Fajr to see if you're serious. If you really care about your deen, then come at Salat al-Fajr. So for a number of days, the Imam alayhi salam would speak to him about the miraculous creation of Allah. Human biology. The Imam speaks about the function of the different organs and how these organs can only function because they are the handiwork of an all-wise creator. So even medical students, when you show them the ahadith of Imam Al-Sadiq in Tawheed al-Mufaddal, they're amazed that these are words that were spoken 13 centuries ago. So the Imam alayhi salam, he taught biology, he taught chemistry, he taught physics, and he also taught theology. And one of the prominent, one of the most gifted theologians in our tradition is Hisham ibn al-Hakam. And Hisham ibn al-Hakam, by the way, he was not Shia. He became Shia and the Imam took him under his wing and he trained him. And the Imam had so much confidence in Hisham ibn al-Hakam that when people would come to debate Imam Al-Sadiq, the Imam would say, debate Hisham. If you can defeat Hisham, that means you can defeat me. Imagine how much confidence Imam Al-Sadiq had in Hisham. Now, how many of us have that type of understanding? Wouldn't it be an honor that when Imam Sahib al-Zaman reappears, that he can refer to you and he can send you to places to represent the school of Ahlul Bayt, where the Imam has full confidence in your ability to defend your aqeedah? How many of us have spent the time to develop a deep understanding of Islam? And the Imam alayhi salam, despite his great knowledge, he was the most approachable person. Even atheists used to enter into Masjid al-Haram. During Hajj, the Imam alayhi salam would be in tawaf and they would have discussions with the Imam. And sometimes the Imam would talk to them as he's performing tawaf. And sometimes he would say that, let me finish my tawaf and we'll have a conversation. The Imam welcomed their questions. The Imam never spoke rudely to them. And sometimes when the companions of Imam Al-Sadiq would debate these atheists, they would get very emotional and some of them would get angry. And the atheists would say that, calm down. Why are you becoming... We debate Imam Al-Sadiq and we're much more aggressive, and he never loses his temper. He's very calm. There was a man who came to Imam Al-Sadiq. He was an atheist. He said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I don't believe that there's a creator. So the Imam says, you don't believe that you are created? The man said, no. So the Imam alayhi salam, one question shook him. He said, what would you look like if you were created? You say that you're not created. So you know what a person looks like if they don't have a creator. What would you appear to be? What would be your qualities and your properties if you were created? Because to say that I'm not created implies that I know what the properties and the characteristics of a created being is. And the man thought to himself that if I was created, I would be a physical being. I would be confined by space and time. I would have width and length. I would have texture. I would be three. And then he realizes that all of these qualities are within himself. There's another conversation where a man, Ibn Abi al-Awja, he has a conversation with Imam Al-Sadiq during tawaf. And the Imam alayhi salam, he says to him, the man says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I don't believe in God. And I think that there is no creator. And I feel sorry for you Muslims. You guys are worshipping and struggling, and I don't believe that there's anything after death. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, إِن يَكُنِ الْأَمْرُ كَمَا تَقُولُ وَلَيْسَ كَمَا تَقُولُ. That if the reality is what you say, meaning that there is no life after death, there is no creator, and indeed that's not the case, but let's assume that you are right, that there is no hereafter, there is no God. نَجَوْنَا وَنَجَوْتَ. We are saved and so are you. At the end of the day, I lived, I ate, I slept, I got married, I enjoyed life, you enjoyed life. If we die and there is no creator and there is no accountability, then nothing happens to me and nothing happens to you. وَإِن يَكُنِ الْأَمْرُ كَمَا نَقُولُ. But if the reality is as we say it is, that there is a creator, that there is life after death, that there is Jannah, there is Jahannam, نَجَوْنَا وَهَلَكْتَ. If the reality is that you have a creator and he had expectations of you and there is accountability, then we are saved and you are destroyed. This is essentially what Westerners call Pascal's wager. But many people don't know that this was actually Imam Al-Sadiq's argument long before Pascal. So this was Imam Al-Sadiq's knowledge. The Imam alayhi salam had the ability to teach the natural sciences as well as the religious sciences. Now I want to conclude by mentioning one other aspect of the character of Imam Al-Sadiq. And that is, typically when you have someone with immense knowledge, usually they're not the most humble people. And if you don't believe me, go to some of the universities, right? Especially if you go to Ivy League schools. The more credentials they have, oftentimes, the more arrogant they are. They're not approachable. They don't have humility. Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam was the grandson of the Prophet, an Imam with this immense knowledge, and yet he was the most down to earth and the most humble of people. It's narrated that one day Imam Al-Sadiq was praying in the masjid of the Prophet. And it was during a time where there was no people, no one was in the masjid. It was after the daily prayers. And the Imam was praying alone in the masjid. And there was a man who was traveling. He had come to perform Hajj. He was traveling to Medina and Mecca. And at that time, travelers would have these belts, and they would put their gold coins in their belts. So this man, he went and he performed wudu, and he took off his belt, and he returns and his belt is gone. His belt is missing. And the only one who was in the masjid is Imam Al-Sadiq. So he goes and he accuses Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq of stealing his belt, the belt that had money in it. The Imam alayhi salam, and this man is shouting that there's no one else here. It must have been you. The Imam alayhi salam says, how much? Very calmly, how much was in your belt? He said 1,000 dinars, 1,000 gold coins. The Imam alayhi salam turned to one of his companions or one of his servants who was nearby, and he said to him, go to my house, I have some money stashed away, bring it. The Imam alayhi salam gave him 1,000 dinars. The Imam didn't take anything from him, but the Imam didn't argue with him. Khalas, you think it's lost? Without any drama, without any arguing, the Imam gave him 1,000 dinars. The man, as he took it, thinking that he got his right from the thief who stole his money, he's walking out of the masjid and he sees his belt by the entrance. He forgot it. He forgot where he placed the belt. And he thinks to himself that, oh my God, what did I do? I accused an innocent man, an honorable man, of stealing from me, and he didn't steal it. And he paid me from his pocket. So he goes back to the Imam. He says to him, I apologize. I misplaced my belt. Here is your money back. The Imam says, نَحْنُ أَهْلُ بَيْتٍ إِذَا أَعْطَيْنَا شَيْئًا لَا نَسْتَرْجَعُ. We come from a family that when we give, we don't take back. I challenge you, brothers and sisters, is there anyone in the world who has this spirit, this love, this compassion, this humility? The Imam alayhi salam, he could have ignored the guy. In fact, the Imam, one word from him, they would have thrown this guy in prison. Who is this random person accusing Ja'far al-Sadiq of theft? The Imam doesn't bicker, he doesn't argue for money. Look at how the Imam alayhi salam values peace more than money. If it was you and I, we would have probably physically assaulted the guy in the masjid of the Prophet. We would have dragged it out and it would have been a big legal case. The Imam says, because of money, who cares? Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace it. And I want to conclude with this. This shows you the humility of Imam Al-Sadiq. And this is a very relevant story. It has a very practical lesson for us. There's a narration, and this narration is in Al-Kafi. And the narration says, وقع بين أبي عبد الله وبين عبد الله ابن الحسن كلام حتى وقعت الضوضاء. Imam Al-Sadiq had many relatives. He had many cousins. And he had one cousin from the descendants of Imam al-Hasan, Abdullah ibn al-Hasan. And this hadith says that there was an argument. There was a heated argument between Imam al-Sadiq and Abdullah ibn al-Hasan. And the argument became so heated that there was shouting because other family members got involved and there was shouting and yelling. حتى وقعت الضوضاء بينهم واجتمع الناس. People came and they surrounded them. There was arguing. فافترقا. They separated. And of course, in this instance, who's in the wrong and who's in the right? Imam al-Sadiq is ma'soom. His cousin Abdullah ibn al-Hasan, he's the one who crossed the line. He's the one who behaved in a way that was unbecoming of him. So Imam al-Sadiq returns to his home and Abdullah ibn al-Hasan returns to his home. The narrator who's narrating this incident, he says that morning, so they each, in the evening, they went to their homes. Imam al-Sadiq returned to his home and Abdullah ibn al-Hasan returned to his home. The narrator says, at Fajr, I was leaving my house. I had some work to do. And then he says, فَإِذَا أَنَا بِأَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ عَلَى بَابِ عَبْدِ اللَّهِ ibn al-Hasan. In the middle of the night, at the time of Fajr, I saw Imam al-Sadiq at the doorstep of his cousin. And he says, I heard the Imam speaking to the maid, the servant, at the house of his cousin, saying, Ya Jariya, quli li Abi Muhammad yakhruj. Tell my cousin, Abu Muhammad, Abdullah ibn Hasan, tell him to come out. I want to speak to him. The cousin came out and he sees Imam al-Sadiq in the early morning at the time of Fajr, and even he was surprised. What brings you to my house so early in the morning? Ya Aba Abdullah, ma bakkara bik. What caused you to come to my home so early? The Imam says, Inni talawtu ayatan min kitabillah al-bariha fa'aqlaqatni. The Imam said, last night after our argument, I read a verse in the Quran that made me worry. What is that verse? Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah 13, verse 21, where Allah says, الَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلْ وَيَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ وَيَخَافُونَ سُوءَ الْحِسَابِ. Allah describes the believers as those who maintain the things that Allah expects them to maintain. And that is to maintain ties with your family. Imam al-Sadiq, usually when there's a dispute, there's a zalim and there's a madloom. In this case, Abdullah ibn al-Hasan, he was the one who wronged Imam al-Sadiq. But Imam al-Sadiq has come to him to reconcile. Many of us, what is our attitude? I didn't do anything wrong. They have to come and apologize to me. But look at Imam al-Sadiq. He teaches us the importance of silat al-rahim. When we have disputes, especially with family, with relatives, don't cut people off for weeks, months, years. The Imam did not even want the sun to rise unless he reconciled with his cousin. And then the hadith says, فَاعْتَنَقَا وَبَكَيَا. Imam al-Sadiq hugged him and they both cried. This is Imam al-Sadiq. Some of us, we hold grudges against each other for weeks, for months, for years. And sometimes the grudges are so intense that we pass them down to our children. Because my dad or my grandfather had an issue with your grandfather, khalas, our families are mortal enemies until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Look at the humility of Ja'far al-Sadiq. Even though he was wronged, he had the humility to go and reconcile. He is the one who initiated the reconciliation. This was Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And when this man was on his deathbed, what do you think his final wasiyah was? What was his final testament? The narrations say that after his death, one of his companions, Abu Basir, he comes to the Imam, he comes to the wife of Imam Al-Sadiq after the death of the Imam. He says, دخلت على حميدة أعزيها بأبي عبد الله. He says, I went to Hamida, the wife of Imam Al-Sadiq, to send my condolences to her for the death of Imam Al-Sadiq. فبكت وبكيت لبكائها. As soon as I mentioned the name of Ja'far al-Sadiq, his wife began to cry. And she said to me, Ya Aba Muhammad, if only you were with Imam al-Sadiq, or if only you were there at the time of his death, لَرَأَيْتَ عَجَبًا. You would have witnessed something incredible if you were to witness what Imam al-Sadiq said on his deathbed. He was going in and out of consciousness. When he opened his eyes, he said, gather all of the family, the direct family, the relatives, the cousins, the nieces, the nephews, everyone surrounded the deathbed of Imam al-Sadiq. And what did the Imam alayhi salam say to them? When all of them gathered, he said, إن شفاعتنا لا تنال مستخفا بالصلاة. That our intercession does not reach the one who takes his salah lightly. تبكي العيون بدمعها المتوردي حزنا لثاو في البقيع الغرقدي. تبكي العيون دمايا لفقد مبرز من آل أحمد مثله لم يفقدي. أي النواظر لا تفيض دموعها حزنا لمأتم جعفر بن محمد. للصادق الصديق بحر العلم مصباح الهدى العابد المتهجد رزء له أركان دين محمد هدت وناب الحزن قلب محمد. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. صلوا على محمد وآله.